everybody. Welcome back to What the Film, a movie podcast. I'm your host, Logan Thompson, joined as always by
Ethan Kaufman. Hi. Hello, everybody.
Today, we got a wonderful little segment planned for you all. Ethan, would you like to say what it is?
It is a ranking and also just kind of a comprehensive deep dive into one of Hollywood's biggest stars currently. We're talking about Glen Powell because we are, and you know it, we're living in the Glenaissance right now.
We are living in the Glenaissance, a term that Ethan came up with literally 2 minutes ago.
There's no way I came up with that. Definitely heard that somewhere and just filed it away unknowingly.
And yeah, you just forgot that you heard of that somewhere.
Unintentional
plagiarism. We're going to pretend that you came up with it. How does that sound?
I will take credit for it.
So we're going to go through a few of his movies here. We're going to go through Spy Kids 3D, The Dark Knight Rises. Then we got a big gap after that until Everybody Wants Some, Hidden Figures, Set It Up, Top Gun Maverick, Devotion, Hitman, Anyone But You, and Twisters.
The classic 10.
Classic 10 films right there. 9 of which we'll be ranking, one of which... I mean, we could rank The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
Why not? It's just kind of awkward as the only movie that we're not ranking.
Yeah.
So,
we'll do that.
We might as well.
Okay.
So, with that being said, I think we should just kind of dive in. We're going to be going through each of these movies in release order, meaning we're starting with his first ever movie, Spy Kids 3D, Game Over, in 2003, where he played Long-Fingered Boy.
This is his actual character name, yes. Long-Fingered Boy. I did not know this. I always knew he was there as that one, ref in space on the moon when Junie has to do, the mech fight.
Yep.
He was just kind of there. But he apparently had long fingers. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't really notice the long fingers, but apparently they're a thing. Fun scene. You know, he's a corrupt ref. There really is some complexity
paid off.
to his characters. Yeah. Well, he's not paid off. He's gambling on the fight for Junie to lose.
Yeah.
So he's helping Junie out, and he's like, hey, by the way, don't get beat up too much.
And I can get
beat up,
points.
But don't get beat up too much, and you'll get me some points. So
I think this is so silly to look back on as just the beginnings of Glen Powell.
Yes,
because I watched this movie as a wee lad. I wasn't thinking, he's gonna be a movie star, and look at him now.
Yeah, I remember watching this movie and whatever whatever car my parents had, where they had the movie thing on the car. You know what I'm talking about? I don't really know if they have those anymore.
The little
DVD player.
Thingy? Yeah,
the little TV. So I remember watching Spy Kids 3D Game Over on there multiple times. And I did not realize how just bad the effects were until I just watched that clip. Yeah.
I think it's it's up there as the worst blue screening I've ever seen in a movie, but it's there's a charm to it where
there's totally a charm to it.
It's terrible. It looks horrid, but it's so silly.
Yeah.
And when Sylvester Stallone is playing 4 different characters at once and he's just kind of hamming it up. This is such a silly movie. It's terrible, but it's funny.
So on my Glen Powell ranking of the 9 movies that I will be ranking, it is number 8.
Mine too.
Yeah. I just think it fits pretty well there.
It would be such a good last place, but it can't be last place because one, it's a milestone in his filmography. 2, it's silly.
And it's Kid Powell.
It's Kid Powell.
Yeah, we don't get to see Kid Powell in any of these other movies that we're considering.
Of course not.
I think it's just deserves its special place for just being Kid Powell.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on to The Dark Knight Rises, his next movie where he is a Wall Street slumdog. In this film for approximately 30 seconds, He gets his shoes scrubbed by a terrorist. He then gets singled out by Bane, gets
Lucky.
to say a few lines, and then gets
It's like
pushed
what is it? Like
across.
this is a stock exchange. There's no money here. That's the line.
Yeah, that was the line.
That's
And
the
then
line.
Bane pushes him across the stock exchange, knocks him out, and then hacks into the stock exchange and steals money.
Poor Glenny.
Poor Glenny. But honestly, it's awesome. Like I was saying to you before we started recording, there's over like 100 extras in this film, and they picked Glen Powell to be the
Of
guy
course.
with the lines.
He's the
So
guy.
yeah, and that just
He's
kind of
the
shows
that
he's
guy.
the guy. He is
He's
that
the
guy.
that guy in this movie.
Yes, he is. The way that we're talking about David Cornsweet now.
Yeah.
He's the David Cornsweet of yesteryear.
This
Yes.
is the bottom of the ranking just because
Oh yeah.
yeah, I like you brought this up and I was like, he was in The Dark Knight Rises when? And I I didn't remember this scene at all. It's so minor. He's just kind of there for 2 seconds.
Yeah, but it's cool.
But
It
it's
is
cool.
really cool. And I guess like this is also bottom of my ranking, which is pretty obvious. Just because where else would it go?
Yeah.
But I hope one day we see Glenn re-team up with Chris Nolan, but Glenn is like a lead actor in that movie. That would be pretty cool.
That would be nice. This is, but like out of the two that we have starting off, where it's essentially like a very tiny cameo when he wasn't yet big enough to actually have a supporting role. Like, I don't know. This one was just forgettable for me.
Yeah, this one was forgettable, but also just at the end of the day, I do think that Spy Kids has the advantage of being his first movie.
I
of
think
him being a kid.
I would agree with that. I would also say Spy Kids 3, he is like chewing the scenery and is making the most of his 1 minute of screen time. In the 2-line exchange that he has with Bane, Bane has the better line. So
he does. That's a good point. But that's not Glenn's fault.
It's not.
I think I think we've really talked.
We've really exhausted
more.
These 2 movies that he's not really in at all.
And I think we have another movie next where he's not really in it much yet. Everybody
he's
wants
in
some.
it. He's in it. Yeah. This is Everybody Wants Some is the movie that is on my ranking that is not on yours. I have seen it. You have not. It's not super essential, but it's really fun. And like it's just a Richard Linklater hangout movie. I rewatched it before Hitman, and it's just so you can just chill out to it and vibe to it. And Glen Powell isn't in it that much, but he shows up every few scenes and just like has banter with the rest of this great ensemble cast, and he's just chilling out with all of them. There's not like much to his character. He's just kind of like bro-y, like college frat guy who plays baseball. Yeah. I think Richard Linklater as a filmmaker knows how to like create those sort of vibes where it's a good cast and you don't really know much about anybody and you don't even really care what happens that much because nothing really is happening. It's a hangout movie. Yeah. And he's definitely one of the standouts from the cast. I think like his mustache is just beautiful in this. Just every minute his face is on screen. It's there. It's hairy. It's awesome.
From the 2 clips I saw, I was picking up on that too. And like the moments that I did see from him in the clips I saw, because sadly I did not have Paramount Plus, so I didn't get a chance to quickly watch this film before we recorded this. It just seemed like he had a lot of fun with this role. He got to talk about his astronomy signs, or his signs. He only has one, which his character said he was a Leo, and apparently he could make a good dad. That's what I learned from that clip. I also saw him rap in a car.
He does do that.
Yes.
Pretty
sweet.
Like one of my favorite scenes of the movie. This is number 5 on my ranking.
Oh, that's high.
If we were ranking based on quality alone, it would be even higher, but because he's like much more of a supporting role, I can't put it any higher than that, but here we are, I guess, at number 5.
I think I know what movie you're putting this above, and that surprises me.
Really?
Just because it's like, if I'm right about the movie that I think you're putting this above, then you're putting it above a movie that really caught on. in
I
pop
think I know
culture
what you're
recently.
talking about, and I think you're right if you are talking about the movie that I think you're
Hmm.
talking about.
And
Yeah, we'll get there.
yeah, we'll get there. I'm surprised that you would put it above that movie. And
Yeah.
people listening, I'm curious if you caught on.
I
Anywho,
I I want to say because I think one of the reasons that I do have it above that movie that I'm just now assuming and taking for granted is the same movie that you're talking about.
mhm,
I think on top of it just being a better movie, obviously he's been getting a lot more like great leading roles recently, which is awesome and I love to see that for him. I do think he works really well as a supporting character too. This
mhm,
isn't the last time I'll mention that. And I think utilizing him in a huge ensemble like this is just really well done. And I don't want
yeah,
to discount that just because it's a smaller role for him. So,
that's
yeah.
fair. Yeah. And when I see this movie, I might completely agree with you, like when I see it in full, but for now, I'm surprised by it. Anywho, our next movie is Hidden Figures, where Glen Powell plays John Glenn. Look at that, Glenn and Glenn.
Glenn.
Yes, it's genius, honestly, except back then, I don't think anybody really cared.
No.
He has a few good moments in this film. I mean, it's really a star-studded cast: Taraji P. Henson, Octavia Spencer, Janelle Monáe, Kevin Costner, Kirsten Dunst,
Wait,
Mahershala
what was that? What
Ali.
was that before? Go back.
Who?
Your
Yeah,
Horizon
my
boy.
boy Kevin Costner. Yeah, yeah. Kirsten Dunst, Mahershala Ali, and then Glen Powell. There's a lot of people in this film. Oh, and then Jim Parsons as well. I did skip over Jim Parsons. Sorry, Jim.
You skipped over Jim
I
Parsons.
did. Yeah, he has a pretty small role here, but still just certain moments. He essentially plays hot astronaut, and that works. They obviously made him the head astronaut because he was the best looking of those guys, like let's be honest. And he just delivered all of his the few lines that he had with just like such suave, almost just
Yeah.
those bits of like
He's very classy.
yeah, like I like her numbers. And the thing where he did not want to fly until he got Taraji P. Henson's numbers and was like in Taraji P was like, yeah, this is fine. Like you
Yeah.
guys are gonna be fine. And he pulled off those moments. One, because like he's a solid actor who's really good at just reading lines, but also because he's just a handsome person and is able to pull certain things off with looks alone.
I really don't have a lot to say about him here. I didn't remember he was in it because it's been years since I've watched this, and his role is that small that if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen it in a while, you won't remember him. But like I did go back and watch a clip or two. He's very serviceable, and he's definitely someone with the context now of like, oh yeah, I can see how he kind of worked his way up the ladder because he's just always a
Yeah.
likable presence no matter what he's in,
Mm-hmm.
and that extends to this too.
Yeah. And you can kind of see the base of what I think is your typical expected Glen Powell performance in a movie like Hidden Figures, where he's confident, he's charming, he's again like good looking. Like they never, aside from it, say one movie on this whole ranking, which is actually the next movie we're going to talk about, do I think that the film intentionally makes him look worse than he does?
Yeah.
And I think that there's just a reason for that. They want to lean into that to make him this charming, pretty boy. And those are just all the characters that he plays.
I mean, slamming his face into a desk isn't really doing his face any favors,
Yeah,
but
but then when you look at him in the background, he doesn't even have a bruise on his face. So his face
fair.
seemed pretty fine.
Fair. Where's
Yeah.
Hidden Figures on your ranking?
Number 7.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like solid role, I guess you could say, but
Yeah.
just not much. So
Yeah. It's
there's
a
not much
good
to go
movie
off
where
of.
he's not really doing too much to make it better, but he's also not obviously dragging it down at all. So
Exactly. So with that being said, we can finally get into his first leading role, which is
yeah.
really exciting to me. That being Set It Up.
Set it
This is
up.
this is the movie I was referring to as like the one movie that I feel like made him look worse than he does. Not by much, but it gives him a pretty bad haircut and
It
just makes
does.
him look kind of dorky
But
and
like likable dorky.
likable dorky, but
Yeah.
still just the kind of guy that you think got bullied in high school, potentially.
Like it's necessary though for the character because one,
Oh, it
a lot
is.
of the rom-com energy is like the like likable awkward type stuff, so
Yes.
he's not coming in here with the confidence of like someone in Hitman.
Yeah.
And also the whole concept of the rom-com is that like he is someone's assistant, and
Yes.
so I think he needs to have more of that like beta type personality to where
Yeah.
he's going getting stuff done for someone else who's
Yeah.
in a position of more power.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with them making him not look as good in
Yeah.
this film. I think it's great, and I think it really works. I think this is a wonderful rom-com.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with this movie. They're both great. Him and Zoe Deutsch, is that the right way to say
Deutsch,
it?
I think.
Deutsch, Zoe
Yeah.
Deutsch. They just work so well together. Their chemistry was just very seamless, and I just had no issues really with them in this film, and Glenn in particular.
Yeah. I'm such a sucker for just a good, fun rom-com, and this gave me everything that I wanted out of it.
Yeah.
I think his chemistry with Zoe Deutsch I think is really great, and while it's not my favorite of the rom-coms he's been in, it probably has my favorite relationship out of them and like easily the best chemistry between him and like his co-star. And there's just like a lot of really great moments in this when they're at the Yankee game, like just fun, silly little random rom-com moments that even in his other rom-coms you don't get, like the pizza scene when they're in the bedroom and they're just eating the pizza just straight out of the box after climbing up the fire escape.
Such
Such
a
a
good
fun, cute
scene.
moment.
Oh my
I
god, that
love
was
that.
such a good scene. That's one of my favorite Glen Powell scenes, really. I mean,
Yeah.
I made it my custom poster for Set It Up, just the bit where he's on the ladder holding the pizza box, looking down at Zoe Deutsch. It's so good.
Yeah, when he's like yelling up at Lucy Liu, telling her to like leave the guy, like that, like at the airport.
Yes.
That's
Oh,
great.
yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. This is
good
my number
stuff.
3.
This is also my number 3.
Oh,
We're just lining
wow.
up everywhere.
Wow. I
Dang.
mean, it's going to change a little bit at least because we don't have all the same movies.
Right. I mean,
Like,
unless you have Devotion at 5 and then nothing changes. We'll see. We'll get there.
We will see. Wow, I'm shocked that we both had it that high.
It was such a pleasant surprise. I figured I
Yes.
would enjoy it, but I got invested in it, and I didn't
Mhm.
think I was gonna get so invested in it.
Me too. And I just really appreciated it because it felt so different from
Yeah.
what you would expect from Glen Powell because they just do different things with him.
I think back to like the whole making him a little more unattractive, which is again still not saying much, but I think in taking him down a peg or two, he is able to use that to almost build himself back up. And I think one, he has a lot more to do here than anything else he'd been in up to that point. But I think it just like this role just really lets him shine and be his fun-loving self in a way that I honestly can't say any of these others do. Like some of them, yes, in different ways. I don't think there's like another Set It Up in his filmography, even if there are other films in the genre.
It's very different from his other rom-com, Anyone But You, which we're going to talk about soon. But first, we need to take a step into Glen Powell being a fighter pilot.
Of course.
With two
movies.
Next movie is Top Gun Maverick.
Let's go!
I mean, it's the start of this whole thing. Like, we would not be here today without Top Gun Maverick.
Completely.
And there's a very strong case for Glen Powell not only getting his big like movie star start here, but like this so far being the peak of it.
Yeah, I think like it's not a leading role like Set It Up was. So like in terms of billing, it's a downgrade. But I think he has so many scenes. Like it's just his natural charm. He leaps off the screen, and anytime he is there, you are like paying attention to what he's saying. He's so cocky. He's so lovably cocky in this movie, and you hate him for a lot of it, but in a fun way. And then by the end, you love him because he like swoops in as Deus Ex Machina and saves them.
Yeah.
And I think in giving him that moment where like it is Tom Cruise and Miles Teller, really the two of them for the whole third act, but in having Glen Powell come in, he adds something
He
where it's like
does.
this couldn't have happened had his character not come in, and just having that moment I think was essential. And also just being attached to Top Gun Maverick, which was one of the highest grossing movies of the year, is like one of the most well liked movies of the decade easily. I don't
Yeah.
know a single person who doesn't like Top Gun Maverick. And
It's hard
so
not to. It's
I
just a cool movie with fighter jets.
I think for many reasons this jump started the Glenaissance.
Yeah. And I think it's totally worthy of having jump started the Glenaissance. But I
Yeah.
like here too is that you do get to see him as this cocky guy. You don't really see a lot of that with Glen Powell. You do kind of see that in Twisters. I'd assume you kind of see that in Everybody Wants Some,
Yeah.
but that's it with Glen Powell really as a cocky person, unless you want to count like Spy Kids and Dark Knight Rises. You get to see this different side to him as just a character actor that still fits in his level of acting that really worked here. And this is a little off topic, but I just wanted to mention that Miles Teller could have really jump started his career from this film. Like
Yeah.
he had such a chance to become like the biggest star on the planet after Top Gun
And
Maverick.
it just didn't happen.
Has he been in anything since Top Gun Maverick?
Was the
Literally anything?
There was some movie from that Joseph Kosinski also did with like Chris Hemsworth, and I think it was that same
Spiderhead?
year. That, yeah.
Okay, so that
Was that
I wanna,
after?
that I think that's technically after, but I don't know if I'd like count that.
Yeah.
I mean, like just before, like that year, he was in Top Gun Maverick, The Offer, like the miniseries about the making of The Godfather,
Yeah.
and Spiderhead. But he doesn't have a movie
After
until
that.
Michael,
Really?
the Michael Jackson
That's
biopic, where he's
that feels like it's too
fourth
long.
billed.
No.
So 3 years separated from Top Gun Maverick is the next Miles Teller movie,
That's wild.
where he's billed below Jafar Jackson, Coleman Domingo, Nia Long, and then it's him. So that could be a big movie for him, given that it's Michael. It's probably going to make a lot of money, but still, he should have had his projects lined up for after Top Gun Maverick, and people I bet were like really trying to get him onto more stuff. And I hope he like fired his agent or something. Because
I mean, I think Glen Powell's role in Maverick is a really good role to jumpstart like this kind of hype that he now has.
Oh,
because
yeah.
whereas with Miles Teller, like while he's in it more than Glen Powell, he is at the heart of all of the character conflict. And
Exactly.
like he's in it more, but we know more about him. Whereas Glen Powell's character, like he steals every scene that he's in, but he's much more of a presence than a fully fleshed out character. And I think in many ways it makes you want to see more of him because it's
True.
not like we have this full understanding of this character.
Mhm.
And so we want to see what else he brings to different roles. And like it is more of a character actor type role.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I'd say Glen Powell is a pretty big character actor.
Yeah.
And even when he's giving a fantastic performance, because one of these movies, I think the performance really stands out amongst the rest
Agreed.
of them, it's still within that Glen Powell realm.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen him do anything too different from what I'd expect from him yet. But I don't know. I would argue that Miles Teller could have been bigger just because
totally
the end of this film, it's
Miles Teller also had like a full decade before this of stuff, whereas Glen Powell has a lot less to work from.
That too. And maybe that helped Powell. Because it was like, oh, like maybe this is a one-off for Teller, while Powell, he's new and refreshing.
Yeah.
So, but maybe after Top Gun 3, if Teller has a really big role, then he'll get something. And speaking of which, we should mention Glen Powell, according to you, Ethan.
Yeah.
According to what we read online.
Articles that came
knows
out today.
The date for when they are shooting Top Gun Maverick, or sorry, Top Gun third part. As it's currently titled.
Yes. So hyped for Top Gun third part.
Yeah.
Please keep that title.
Third part. Just
please let that actually be the name of the movie.
Oh my god, that would be kind of horrendous, but also pretty sick.
All right, where does Maverick rank for you?
Maverick is number 2.
All right, it's my number 1, but could easily be the number 2 switched with what I'm assuming your number 1 is.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, I thought it would be kind of obvious what number 1 would be for this ranking for both
you,
of us.
Yes, because for you, I'm assuming it's the one I'm thinking of that you've seen 3 times. Yeah.
Well, listen, we'll get into
maybe
that,
we'll get there.
We'll get there. For all now, right. Let's venture over to Glen Powell's second outing as a fighter pilot. It happened to come out in the exact same year, just months later. Devotion. He stars alongside Jonathan Majors in this film. Jonathan Majors, someone else who could have become a big movie star, but
someone who was totally on his way
stopped him.
Yeah,
from that. And this is a film that I think could have been remembered in a really cool way, where it's like 2 of the biggest young stars, and this is a film that like kind of got forgotten, but they both happen to be starring together in. Yeah. But instead it's like, oh, one of the biggest young stars, and then a young star who,
that other guy,
lost his charm, one might say.
You could say that.
So to actually talk about Glen Powell and this film as a whole, Powell plays a different type of fighter pilot. He's just a really nice guy, someone who you never really see be cocky or really show much complex personality whatsoever. The most complexity in Powell's character in Devotion is him like being almost unintentionally racist, you could say, where it's like trying to help Jonathan Majors' character out in certain ways that Powell thinks are helpful and hard for him. And then Majors is like, sure, this is a little helpful, but don't go telling me that this is a lot of work for you because like you're white. This is all easy for you. And kind of being really blunt about it. And it's true, but it just felt bland. There just wasn't too much interesting going on here. And I wish I just saw more complexities, because I think this could have been more interesting if it was just written a little more, like just written riskier. This film was very much just written to be a crowd-pleasing fighter pilot movie, and that's what it was, you could say. I think this whole film just aims to be a crowd pleaser, and it definitely has its moments where the action is pretty solid, but it just never wowed me. It's just kind of a forgotten film, like the Forgotten War it's based on, and sadly gets severely swiped under the rug because of Top Gun Maverick. I think if this film just came out like a year after and just had the distance from Maverick of like a year, things would be so much better.
Probably.
But like not even better in the sense of this film would be better, but it would just be remembered.
Yeah, more. I think so.
Because you look at it and it's just like not that many people have seen it, like on Letterboxd. Of all the people I follow on Letterboxd, like no one who I'm like actually friends with has seen this movie.
Yeah.
Which I can't say I don't think about any of these other Glen Powell movies that we've talked about.
Yeah. I think I was going to the movies a lot when this came out, and so I was getting this trailer a lot, and it just didn't appeal to me. One, because again, it's like, all right, Glen Powell's a fighter pilot again so soon. Come on, guys. It also just looked, like you said, kind of really like middle of the road, just safe and not doing much. And that's why I didn't end up watching it. I watched like a couple minutes of it on either end of the movie, but I was just not compelled to sit down and watch it because it's just like it's a long movie relatively. And it just wasn't giving me enough in those few minutes to really entice me to watch the rest of it. I do think it's funny, though, that I guess, spoiler alert, at the end, Jonathan Majors is dead and Glen Powell's just kind of vibing. And it just kind of lines up with how their respective careers actually wound up going.
I wouldn't say Powell was vibing.
I mean, he's not vibing, but like he's there. He's still out there.
He is not vibing. Vibing means that you're
He's
just
like,
like happy.
no,
Powell
I
is
don't
like
consider vibing to be
sad
happy.
and depressed after this happens.
Glen Powell, actual Glen Powell, not Glen Powell in this movie, real life Glen Powell is frustrated that Jonathan Majors left such a big hole in Hollywood that he now has to fill, that he is filling beautifully. But still.
All right, well,
Where does it
I
rank?
guess. Oh yeah, I forgot. I almost forgot to put my ranking. Number 6. I just felt like it couldn't justify putting it any higher, just
Yeah,
on sheer like memorability.
fair.
You know.
All right.
So with that being said, let's move on to Anyone But You. So you're not the biggest fan of this film.
I am not. And it's unfortunate because I saw this trailer and was like, oh, let's go. Fun, studio type rom com, Glen Powell, Sydney Sweeney, this is going to be my jam. And then I didn't see it when it came out. And then I went back and watched it however many months ago. It's just like not that good. I think Glen Powell and Sydney Sweeney are both doing what they can. I just don't think, like, on a writing level, they were given much to work with, and it feels very overproduced in a way that Set It Up totally didn't, to where it's like the editing is messy as hell, it doesn't just visually look great, and there's just not a lot of room for it to breathe. It felt very voiceless, and I think outside of the two of them really just being the charming movie stars that they both are, like, it was a very cookie cutter rom-com that I didn't like, but I can see why it blew up the way it did, and I'm very happy it did, because even if I don't personally, if I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to, like, this hugely bolsters the both of them for just like getting to do more stuff and just
Yeah.
bringing back movie stars in general. And so I am still very happy that like an original rom-com with such focus on who's in it rather than like the studio making it made the money it did, took over TikTok and Instagram and whatever, and has given Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell more opportunities as actors.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
And I just think, yes, this is a cookie cutter type of rom com. It doesn't take any risks. It has its fun moments. I think
Totally.
Powell and Sweeney have solid chemistry. Maybe not the most romantic chemistry, but definitely sexual chemistry.
I think you can tell they had fun like on set when the cameras
Yeah.
weren't rolling.
Or just like overall, I think this was a fun movie to make, kind of for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is like you get a sense that everybody who worked on this enjoyed working on it. It just didn't result in the best movie. But like not everything has to.
No. And I'm not gonna say that this was awful either. I had
It's not.
fun with this film. It made me smile. It was a great double feature with Poor Things.
That's a wild double feature.
Yeah, Simona and I double featured that together. We watched Poor Things first and then this, and I liked Poor Things better. She liked this better. Yeah.
I'm trying to think if Poor Things first is the right call, if that's your double feature.
I think it has to be, because then you
I
have
think you're
this
right.
as almost like a just kind of a cleanser, a palate cleanser.
I mean, because with Barbenheimer, I did Barbie first, and it was totally the right call. I cannot imagine enjoying Barbie as much as I did if I just had Oppenheimer like sifting and having
Really?
yeah.
I did it to reverse, and I think
No,
that's there. I couldn't imagine doing it any other way.
you're wrong. Everyone who says that is wrong.
I like having my entree, my 5-star entree, and then dessert.
But if we're talking about Barbenheimer, they are both 5-star entrees and desserts rolled into one. They are both of that level. Very different kinds of it, but
I would very much call Oppenheimer like a steak, and then Barbie just this like incredible milkshake or something.
God no.
No.
I don't know. I feel like
Okay.
it minimizes Barbie like a lot of people saying that it existed as a palate cleanser after Oppenheimer was like, Barbie made me cry multiple
Oh,
times.
it made me cry too multiple times, but it didn't like make me think about the world ending.
But it made me think about the world.
It did. I think overall they were both very good and impactful films.
Yeah. I
And
also think it speaks
neither
volumes that
on the
like
level to pour things in anyone but you. Or
I
sorry, not
think it's no, I think it's
opposite way
really
around.
yeah, I think it's really great though that like because like we're now pretty much a year after Barbenheimer. I like how we're revisiting this just randomly, even if it is a tangent. I
Hmm.
think it speaks volumes that like you could watch either of them first and have it work.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
that's just a good double feature where it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
And
right.
I think
That's our Barbenheimer recap.
that is our Barbenheimer recap
Randomly.
where we disagree. I didn't even know that you were a Barbie first kind of guy.
Yeah.
That we don't disagree on a lot of big movie things. I feel like this is one of the biggest movie things that we've disagreed on.
I don't think I'm disagreeing with you though necessarily because I think like for me Barbie first was what had to happen, but I think for like just the general order in which everyone should go about it, like it's just whatever works for you.
Yeah, except Oppenheimer and then Barbie is better.
No, no,
You
no,
see,
no.
we're disagreeing.
Okay, that's okay. I think because also I was so much more excited for Oppenheimer than I was Barbie, and it made Oppenheimer better seeing Barbie first and being so wowed by it and pleasantly surprised. And like, I didn't think I was going to give Barbie 5 stars, and I did first time I watched it. And it was just like, whoa, holy crap, that was much better than I thought it was going to be. And then I still have Oppenheimer in front of me.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
fair.
It's all
All
right.
right, well,
We finished talking about
back.
anyone but you.
Are we? I
Where
mean,
were
we
we?
have to rank it. We
Yeah.
have to rank it. Is there anything else that we might have missed before our Barbenheimer tangent?
I feel like I wanted to talk about the supporting cast, but I'm now looking at it and I really don't have much to say about anybody. Shout out that one guy on the plane that is sitting next to Sydney Sweeney's character in the trailer when like Glen Powell is hunched over like talking to her and he's like there's nothing small about me and that guy's just like what the and then it like cuts to the
Yeah.
next thing. Just that guy.
Shout out to that is that guy
Shout
a
out
that guy?
that guy is very much well, he's not a that guy because you can't like he's not the type of person who you'll realize, oh, he was in all of these other things for 2
Mhm.
seconds. But he's so perfectly just like that line delivery, especially for the trailer, perfect. Could not have been any better.
I agree. At some point we need to do a that guy ranking.
We got to do a that guy ranking.
But before we do that guy ranking, we need to rank where anyone but you goes on Glen Powell rankings.
Where
For
is it
you,
for
is it
you?
number 7
It's number 6.
or number 6? Yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
That's what I figured.
It's your number 5?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So we have 2 movies left, both from this year: Hitman and Twisters. First up is Hitman.
What about Twistman and Hitsters? What about those?
Just that combination right there.
Nah, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah,
Hitman.
I think that they both work on their own. I've seen Hitman 3 times.
3 times.
You called me out for it a little earlier.
Yeah.
And yeah, going
It's
back
a lot
to
of
that,
times.
that's a lot of times to see Hitman. I would watch it a 4th. I would watch
I'm
it
sure
a 5th,
you would.
a 6th.
Sure you would.
It's not even a 5-star movie to me. It's a solid 4-star movie, but it's just so watchable.
It's so watchable.
Glen Powell's just growth into becoming Ron.
Yes.
His just the Gary Johnson to Ron to Grom.
Everyone
is great.
that he plays in this movie for 10 seconds, all of like the little cutaways to him playing some other character when he's Patrick Bateman,
Mm-hmm.
like all of
So
those,
good.
easily the definitive Glen Powell performance as
Yeah.
of right now, by far.
Like I would say Glen Powell's 30 seconds or maybe 1 minute as a hillbilly here, because he plays a hillbilly hitman, is stronger than his hillbilly in Twisters.
I agree with you. I think it's so you can tell he co-wrote it with Linklater because
Yeah.
he nails all of the comedic delivery.
Yeah.
And it's never in your face. It's never like, ooh, here's a joke, laugh at it. It's just him being silly with high production value where like makeup and hair and costumes are going crazy on him every time, and he's given it 110%, and just that alone is just really funny.
It is. And what I love about this film is it takes everything that Glen Powell does amazing. It takes his confidence, his coolness, his suave, and it also takes that kind of dorkiness that you saw from Set It Up that was really successful and you don't really get to see. And I didn't want to claim this as a film that intentionally makes him look bad, because then it does that to then make him look incredibly sexy later.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, I feel like, keep him looking that way for the whole film. But it does do that for a little bit, where he just looks like this absolute dork cat dad professor who drives a Honda Civic. Like, that's who he is.
Why do they get to have Glen Powell as their college professor? They're so lucky.
Oh, they are so lucky. And you do see that like growth as with him as a professor, where he just gets to be this more confident and cool professor. And you have the students who acknowledge it at one point, who are like, why did our professor get this hot? Or like, why is our professor suddenly so hot? Or something like that. And the biggest thing is his chemistry with Adria Arjona.
Yeah.
It is out of this world. It's the best chemistry I think he's had with any female co-star.
I would disagree, but I think she's such a close second that I'm not even going to fight you on that.
Are you going to say Daisy Edgar-Jones is number one then?
I think Zoe Deutsch is still my favorite, just because like Set It Up compared to like a Twisters or even a Hitman, which is still a rom-com in many ways. I think the fact that Set It Up is such aggressively a rom-com, where like that's the whole package is their chemistry, I think like almost unfairly puts it above some of these others, where I do think like the main thing for Hitman I don't think is that it's a rom-com. I think is that it's an acting showcase for Glen Powell.
Mm-hmm.
And I think putting him just so out in front in a way that none of these others do.
But I would say calling this just an acting showcase for Glen Powell does a disservice. But like, because Arjona gets so many great moments. Also, Austin Emilio, like the three of them all have just amazing standout moments. I mean, Arjona is just, it's terrifying because you just don't know where her character is going to go. She plays it very unpredictably. Just this playfulness, but playful in the way that Harley Quinn is playful. Just this type of, yeah, this is sweet and nice and I like seeing this, but oh my God, like, where is she going to go? Like, what is going to suddenly push her over the ledge? Because you feel like that's going to happen. And you're kind of nervously waiting for that to happen.
That's what I really like about it, is because it's on a filmmaking level, we've seen it a billion times, but on a story level, it feels very refreshing and new. And that's why I think it is so watchable, is because you just get hooked into this story. Glen Powell is going crazy with like all of these little silly characters, but really the two main sides of him are both fully fleshed out and very different. And it's like very much a dual performance in that way. And then I think you throw someone like Adria Arjona into it, who's like, we don't know how she gets looped into all of this, what impact she's going to have. Is she going to kill someone? Is she going to get killed? What's going to go down with that? And it makes you want to keep watching, not only because it's just good, but you really don't know where it's going. And it's just a lot of fun to see how it plays out.
Yeah. And I think Powell, to me, this is his best performance in a movie by a mile. I don't even think it's close.
Nope.
And that's because he plays really two main characters, but then they slowly merge into one character. And he pulls that off. I can't imagine that many people being able to pull the small nuances of that off. I mean, in something like theater, that would be easier. But when it's a film and you can really make grounded out every little detail and everything's just closer, like film acting is just a lot harder than something like theater acting. And I wanted to say that because I could just imagine some theater people hearing this and being like, oh, I could do that. You could do that in theater, but I think doing that in film is just a totally different ballgame.
I think film acting and theater acting are two very different things, and I don't necessarily want to compare them because they're two branches of the same thing, but they require very different skill sets. But I do think there is a closeness you have with film acting that you don't get with theater just because you are physically more removed from it.
Yeah.
And I think that Glen Powell is able to do what a lot of the very best film actors are able to do, which is just be so magnetic on screen that you, like, even without realizing, you're like scanning, waiting for them to mess up or like break character somehow, and they don't, because they are just so compelling.
Exactly. And it's just like, I was kind of sitting there, especially on my third watch, just kind of waiting to see an instinct of Gary while he was full Ron mode, or an instinct of Ron while he was full Gary mode, like earlier in the film before they started merging. And you just never saw that. They were very much distinct and only began merging during the sort of call to action moment he receives. Right. And I don't want to say just it was so good, but it was so good and so entrancing and hypnotic. I was hypnotized by Glen Powell in this film.
So this is your number one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not even close to me.
Okay.
Like, yes, I think Top Gun Maverick is the better movie, but because this performance is just so much better than any other performance I think Powell has ever given, that's kind of how I rank it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you disagree that it's like that much better, I totally understand. But in my opinion, it really is that much better. Like, this was the movie that got me fully sold on Glen Powell.
Yeah, I agree with you in many ways. And I think there are a couple reasons I have it at number 2 instead of number 1, where I do agree. One, easily the best Glen Powell performance, no contest. Mm-hmm. I think this is definitely the most Glen Powell movie for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, he wrote it. So
yeah, like not even that, but just like the way that he is utilized within the film, like they are just sticking him out. Like Hitman is what I think of as the Glen Powell movie, if there was one that came to mind. Yeah. And so all that being said, I think why I really struggled to put it number 1 when maybe it should be there is I had to scroll through 10 rows of movies on Netflix to find it. And had you not watched it 3 times and continued to start conversations about it with me, and if this had been a stronger movie year where it had fallen out of my top 5 faster, or just had never gotten in there because there were already 5 movies I liked more than it when it came out, I just don't think it left as much of a mark on, it's going to sound terrible and pretentious, it wasn't the zeitgeist beast that Top Gun Maverick was. It didn't fully penetrate culture in that way. Mm-hmm. And I think while it definitely is the best case we've had so far for Glen Powell being a movie star, and really is the prime example I would point to, I think I needed something like a Top Gun Maverick where the movie itself was on that scale for me to call it number 1. And so I think Top Gun Maverick scratches that urge that Hitman doesn't. Mm-hmm. But I might even say there are more things working towards Hitman being number 1 than Maverick. It's just because of what I personally value more, I have to put Maverick above it.
That's fair. And what I will say is that was your Netflix, because when I watched it the third time, it wasn't on my Netflix, it was on someone else's Netflix, and they hadn't seen it before, and it showed up like right away. I mean, I think even in just the movie section, it was in the overall section. Scroll down once, 2 movies, first movie.
I think Netflix just sensed that you were present, and even if it wasn't your account, it just realized, oh, Logan's here. We better put up Hitman.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think it's just, and it's frustrating because like I definitely would have wanted this to be on that caliber of like something that people are talking about, and it just wasn't for some reason. I think a lot of that is because it was a streaming movie, and I'm so frustrated that this wasn't in theaters because I think it would have played so well in
It
theaters.
would have.
This
It
would have
totally
been
would
like
have.
one of the biggest crowd pleasers of the year easily,
Yeah.
and instead it got shoved onto streaming, and some unknown number of people watched it in like a week or so, and then it faded into obscurity. And the only reason I'm still here talking about it is because I'm on a movie podcast, where of
Yeah.
course we're going to do that.
Exactly.
So
And what's sad is I think this year has been a big eye-opening year in terms of Netflix films where sure some of them end up doing really well, but you have movies like Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F, and then Hitman that I think would have done better in theaters than they actually did on Netflix. Because Netflix, I think for a big film to be on Netflix, you need like a Netflix star. You
yeah,
have these very established people on Netflix, like Millie Bobby Brown and Adam
that's what I was
Sandler,
gonna.
and
Yeah,
those two had some pretty big movies on Netflix. I mean, Millie especially had a Damsel, and I think that's been the biggest movie of the year for Netflix. But the big thing with them is that they have these out of nowhere movies that sort of take over and all of a sudden get really popular. Like, I did not expect to talk about Under Paris twice this week on two different episodes, but Under Paris, the shark movie in Paris, all of a sudden became like a top trending movie and had no big stars in it. French film, but was like the most watched movie on Letterboxd, I think, at one point. Just, I think the number one movie on Netflix at one point, just out of nowhere. Because that's what happens. That's what happened with something like Squid Game, even Stranger Things.
yeah,
Weren't really any big names attached to it, or huge names attached to it. You could say, like, yes, there were some big names attached to it, but they were sort of stars that lost their stardom and then gained it back with the help of Stranger Things. You know what
yeah.
I
I
mean?
think one of the big things that I think is a positive for Netflix and streaming as a whole is, and Squid Game's probably the one that I would highlight most out of like the decade so far, is I think if you have absolutely nothing attached to your movie or show, there is no actor or director that you can point to and be like, oh, yeah, people are familiar with this person, so they'll want to watch this. I think it is still very possible that you blow up in such huge, unexpected fashion just because people like it doesn't dominate the conversation the way stuff in theaters does, but I
Yeah.
think everybody consumes it so mindlessly all at once that every so often everyone will be like, "Oh yeah, we all did watch this one thing. We really liked this one thing. We liked what it was doing." And it just becomes like a cultural moment, and it's fun when that happens. But where I just can't support streaming as like a sustainable model for entertainment because and it like it's either movies being dumped onto streaming instead of in theaters, or it's shows where they dump every episode out at once instead of releasing them week to week.
Yeah.
There is something about the conversation, just in general, that I value so much that I think everyone, whether they realize it or not, also values. And theaters provide a more long term window for where a movie is out there,
Mm-hmm.
and releasing episodes week to week means that every week you have something new to talk about. And so that conversation is now extended from a weird couple days where everyone watches the first episode on like day one or two. And then everyone for the next month or so kind of goes at their own pace. And either you binge it in a day or you kind of do an episode or two a week at just whatever is convenient for you. And it
Yeah.
just immediately hurts it. And I think week to week is so much better because you always have consistent like you it's the water cooler type thing where it's like you go to the office or you go to class or whatever and you have something to talk about and it's always that thing and you it's like a routine thing. And I'm really upset that Hitman wasn't that and that
Me
instead
too.
a lot of people watched it but kind of forgot about it. A lot of people didn't watch it because some of them just didn't even know it was out there because Netflix really didn't promote it that much. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I wasn't as into film as I am, I don't think I would have known about this before it came out, and I don't know if I
Yeah, I
would have
don't
known
think so
about this
either.
once it did come out. So
And
it
that's
sucks,
sad.
but it's the way it is. But times are changing.
And that's how Netflix is. And I hope that this kind of becomes an unprofitable type of model for them, or they do realize that it could be a lot more successful with the help of theaters and the help of weekly releases. Because at the end of the day, the people that are going to watch it on streaming and the people that are going to binge a show are all there, and they are not going away because you put a movie in theaters or you release it weekly. They're just going to wait, because at the end of the day, their whole thing is saving time and money. They want to
Yeah.
save the time of waiting around, and they want to save the money of spending money on a ticket, regardless of whether or not it was weekly or like in theaters. They're going to stop themselves from like the time and the money like aspects. They're going to save their
Yeah.
money and time. And unless it's something that's so big where they can't resist it. Like my grandma the other day was talking about how there was some show, and for the first time ever she's watching it weekly because she was so excited for it. And I think that that's a good thing. And
Yeah.
yes, she was complaining about it, but at the end of the day, like, she's going to be thinking about that show constantly and like be so excited when she does get to see the next episode and find out what happens next. And just, there's not nearly as much gratification from being able to jump to the next episode right away and
Right.
not having that bit of waiting time. But I'm so bummed that I can't experience too much weekly releases that are going on because I have had a really busy summer. Like, I am like 4 episodes behind on House of the Dragon right now, so I'm gonna kind of have to binge over half of that season, which sucks. I really wanted to watch it weekly, but I haven't been able to. And The Boys, I couldn't do that either, and I was really bummed out because I wanted to. And then the one show that I did watch weekly was The Acolyte, but that was because I made content off of The Acolyte. So,
At least you
like,
got
I
something positive out of
personally,
it.
yes, I got views out of The Acolyte, a lot of
Yeah.
views. And my point is just I'm a just big upstander for the weekly release strategy, and I hope one day Netflix goes to it. I hope maybe for Stranger Things season 5 that could be the first time they try it.
I feel like they're gonna do like what they did for season 4, probably, where like they release it in volumes, sort of,
Yeah,
to like kind of
maybe.
simulate that, but not really do it the way they should be.
Yeah, from what I've seen with some shows that are doing like 3 volumes now, so maybe they'll do 3 volumes for Stranger Things, act
You
1, 2, and
know, we
3.
could make this really simple and just have a new one come out at the same time on the same day until there's no more to put out. That's
There you
like
go.
that's a reliable business
Yeah.
model that has
Won't every
been
episode
working for decades.
Yeah, and won't every episode already be the length of a feature film?
That's the
Like,
thing, is
come
like
on.
you're basically releasing a movie a week even if you stagger it that way.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've been on Hitman for a while now, so
We
you
haven't
have
been
it
on
at number
Hitman, we've been
2.
on content.
Yes,
This
we
was the
have been.
content conversation we've
Yes, this
needed.
was the content conversation that we've needed, but in our little Hitman segment. So Hitman's number 2 for you, right? You
Yeah.
said? Okay, and it's number 1 for me. Well, we got one movie left. I think we both have it in the same spot.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, number 4. I think we could just
Yep.
say. Yeah,
Yep.
so that's Twisters. Before we
Twisters.
get into Twisters, might as well give off our whole ranking to catch people up.
Yeah.
At 9, I have The Dark Knight Rises, 8, Spy Kids 3D, 7, Hidden Figures, 6, Devotion, 5, Anyone But You, 4, Twisters, and I'll explain why very soon. 3, Set It Up, 2, Top Gun Maverick, and number 1 is Hitman.
We
Ethan, what's
we
your
lined
ranking?
up so much.
We do.
This is a slightly different ranking. I
Yeah.
have Dark Knight Rises at 9, Spy Kids 3D at 8, Hidden Figures at 7, Anyone But You at 6, Everybody Wants Some at 5, Twisters at 4, Set It Up at 3, Hitman at 2, and Top Gun Maverick at 1.
Yeah, a lot of those were just the exact same, or
Yep.
like even when we weren't the same, it was a
It was
switch
like
of
swapping
one
two.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's great.
Good
The
stuff.
one thing is that we're ranking a very early career.
Right.
There's a lot of upcoming films, which at the end of this, we're going to briefly talk about for Glen Powell that one day would be included in a ranking like this and will probably be very high up.
One of which
But
is
right
Top Gun
now,
third part.
yes, one of them is Top Gun third part. We did talk about that. So,
Why is it called that?
anyways, let's talk about his newest film, Twisters.
We got twins! What did I think of
we
Twisters?
Talked about it
yeah.
a little bit before, but just overall, what were your thoughts?
I really enjoyed it. I had some issues with it. I think is a lot of them are just kind of my issues with a lot of blockbusters as a whole right now. But like for the most part, this was just a really solid popcorn flick. This was like this being one of the biggest movies of the summer. I'm very happy about. It's just like it's just fun, evil weather disaster movie with a likable cast, and they're just getting shit done.
They are. And yesterday, apparently they made over $9 million, which was the biggest Monday box office gross for a live action film this year, like since Barbenheimer.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, like this film is genuinely catching on, and people are. What's nice is this isn't like. I was worried that this was going to be like Mission Impossible before Barbenheimer.
Yeah.
It's not.
It doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't, and that's weird because Mission Impossible, I think, was really different from Barbenheimer. But this is kind of just a big blockbuster film that's pretty much action, I would say.
A lot of it, yeah.
Yeah. And that's what Deadpool and Wolverine is. So I kind of would have expected Deadpool and Wolverine to eat some of Twister's lunch, and maybe it has. Like maybe Twisters could have made $100 million without Deadpool and Wolverine. Who knows?
Maybe. I think it's because this was also, I think, a lot of what it was for Mission Impossible 2. It's like, obviously, yes, you have a lot of people who aren't going to go to the movies 2 weekends in a row. But I think it's less about it eating into its opening weekend because they're anticipating the big blockbuster following that. I think it's more how it holds. And if it continues to be, I guess, on paper, successful when it's contending with something bigger than it.
Yeah.
And so it's really going to take until this weekend to see for sure. But I think Twisters has legs, like based on its opening weekend at the least, and the reception, which has been really good. Like people seem to really be enjoying it, which is awesome. And like, you know, they feel it and they're chasing it, you know?
They are. They're chasing Twisters, just like, you know, Glen Powell chases and wrangles Twisters and Twisters. So, look at that. I agree that this film was just a really solid popcorn flick. I think Glen Powell in here fits really well.
Great.
Just a lot of fun. It's essentially a blend of his characters in Top Gun Maverick and Anyone But You. Yeah. And that's why I don't have it higher than it is, because this just didn't feel like anything new for Glen Powell. It just sort of felt like he was checking in and doing things that he's already done. And aside from, I would say, the few emotional moments of this film, like the scene at the rodeo where he's talking with Daisy Edgar Jones, all of this is just what we've already seen from him before.
Yeah.
And with a little bit of heart added to it.
I would agree. And I think that's also part of why I like didn't really consider putting it higher is on this specific ranking. His performance is really good, but I don't even know if I'd say he's the best performance in the movie.
Yeah, I think he isn't.
Yeah, and even then it's like he's really not diverging much from what we know. That being said, I do think it just existing as another like successful, good, fun Glen Powell movie so soon, I think is tremendous for him. And like the fact that it's Anyone But You, Hitman, and Twisters all in a 7-month window is crazy. And like the chokehold that he has on movies right now is immense, and I love it. And I'm very excited to see if he is able to keep that going. Because like this could easily be the peak of his career, where like even if he is still a recognizable face over a decade or two down the line, like you could very easily be in a world where you look back on this year as like this is when Glen Powell was on top of the world, and he like slowly stopped being such a presence in Hollywood after this. I hope that's not the case.
Me too.
But I think like this is such a strong run that he's had, and I really want to know if he's going to be able to keep it going.
I think he will be able to keep it going. I mean, we can start talking about some of his future projects if you want, unless you
Let's
feel like we
do
have
it.
more to say. I just
We
feel like
already
there's
talked
not
about
much to
Twisters a good
add because,
bit. Yeah.
yeah, we talked about Twisters on Tuesday. And again, like, this just isn't that different of a performance for Powell. So there's not much to add. And overall, it's just a solid number 4. So his one of his big upcoming projects is The Running Man. This has some of the most that's just been said about it. He's given a lot of interviews about it and talked about this world that Edgar Wright has built for the film. It's a remake of the movie, I think, from the 1980s that
Yeah.
starred Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like I just said, it's directed by Edgar Wright, director of Baby Driver, Scott Pilgrim, Last Night in Soho. So this is going to be really interesting and a great pairing. I would expect a performance that's different from anything we've seen from Powell because he's being paired with Edgar Wright. And I would say that if he had all that success with Twisters and the success from Top Gun, where it's just these classic movies being rebooted, he's gonna make things work with Running Man. What do you think? Anything else?
I mean, if you can feel it, chase it.
Yeah,
Chasing things, running. He's a man. He was born to be in this movie.
he was.
That's the weakest connection that has ever been made to anything. I apologize
Okay.
to our listeners. I'm still hyped for this movie because it has Glen Powell in it. And it's an Edgar Wright movie. I love Edgar Wright. Cornetto trilogy,
I do too.
Scott Pilgrim, Baby Driver. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So good.
So
Such a weird pairing that I just know will probably work.
oh, it's gonna work so well, I feel
Yeah.
like. It's gonna be so fun.
I think seeing him in Hitman confirmed that like he could totally do an Edgar Wright movie.
He totally could. So next is we already talked about Top Gun third part. So I'm gonna jump over to Huntington. It's a movie being directed by John Patton Ford, who previously did Emily the Criminal, and that's all he's done so far. It stars Powell, Margaret Qualley, Ed Harris, Jessica Henwick, and
Yeah.
more. It's about Beckett Redfellow, heir to a multi-billion-dollar fortune, who will stop at nothing to get what he deserves or what he thinks he deserves. I actually remember seeing a set photo of this where it looked like Glen Powell was on a golf course. So this is probably going to come out next year.
I would say this is probably my most anticipated out of these because, like, Emily the Criminal was really, really good, and nobody has seen it and talks about it, and it was just really solid, especially from a directorial standpoint. And so to have that director teaming up with a bunch of really good actors, and it's a revenge thriller, and I cannot stress this enough. Glen Powell plays a guy named Beckett Redfellow.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Amazing. And
so
he's starring next to Margaret Qualley.
Yeah.
After being at Cannes, where it felt like the Margaret Qualley Festival with Kinds of Kindness, and then The Substance.
I can't wait to see her.
Yeah. Just wait till you see The Substance. Oh my god.
Oh, I know.
Oh my god.
Like, I don't know, but I know.
You're gonna find out real quick.
Hitman's gonna get buried even further on my end of year ranking.
I mean, for me, it's like number 10, I think.
Yeah. Where is it for me right now? Let's see. It's still number 7. It's holding strong.
Solid. There you go. Yeah. So next one that I want to talk about is Acorns. It is about this young married couple struggling to survive against a supernatural entity. But the cool thing about it is that it's being directed by J.J. Abrams. This is the only future project that he really has lined up right now. Only known actor for this film is Glen Powell. So,
and that's enough.
It is definitely enough. I mean, yeah, Abrams hasn't directed a film since The Rise of Skywalker.
That's been a while.
It has been a while. And I think that this has a really good chance to be pretty good. It's a not franchise film. Specifically, it's a not Star Wars movie. Abrams has shown that he can make pretty solid films with movies like Super 8.
Yeah.
And The Acorn seems to be a bit more of a grounded type of film, possibly with the married couple. So that could be interesting.
Bring it on.
I agree. And I think the final movie that we're going to talk about is Monsanto. This is being directed by John Lee Hancock, the director of The Blind Side, The Founder, The Little Things, a lot of the movies.
Yeah.
If you can't already tell.
Weird that his next movie is called Monsanto. Monsanto? Is that it?
Well, maybe it's not actually going to be Monsanto.
No, please let that be the title. That's hilarious.
I guess we'll see. So, Powell stars alongside Anthony Mackie and Laura Dern. Just want to point out that Mackie plays somebody named Dwayne Lee Johnson. Sounds very similar to Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Honestly, forget the Glenaissance. We are living in the renaissance of awesome character names.
Mm-hmm.
So here for it.
A lot of very awesome character names. To read the summary of this film, young, untried attorney Brent Wisner, Glen Powell, takes on a seemingly insurmountable case against the giant U.S. chemical company Monsanto on behalf of Dwayne Lee Johnson, who used the company's best-known product, Roundup, a financially successful weed and grass pesticide killer, as part of his job as a high school groundskeeper, is now suffering illnesses. So this seems like it could be maybe an awards type of film?
Possibly.
So maybe whenever that movie comes out, Glen Powell for Best Actor.
It'll happen eventually. It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen at some point.
Don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gonna happen.
I'm betting on Monsanto. All these films that he has coming up, I think Monsanto definitely seems the most like Oscar.
Probably the most Oscar-y, yeah.
Yeah, just about a lawyer sort of sympathizing with a guy who's been screwed by a chemical company.
I mean, who knows though? Because Top Gun Maverick was such a big Oscar movie that like Top Gun third part. Glen Powell, supporting actor.
Top Gun third part.
Possibly. Mm-hmm. Top Gun third part. Come on.
I mean, end of a trilogy. Yeah. Oscars seem to love those, right?
They do. Hopefully, they do love those.
They better love Dune Messiah and Beyond the Spider-Verse, because otherwise, I swear to God.
Oh, we'll kill them.
Yes. Yes, we will. Yes. Even if those movies are terrible, they should win Best Picture.
Yeah.
Don't care. 1-star movies, Best Picture.
Yep.
Anyways, we've done it. We've deep dived into Glen Powell. We've ranked Glen Powell. We've talked about his future. Overall, do you think in 10 years, Glen Powell will still be one of the biggest movie stars on the planet?
Let's come back to that in 2 years. If he can sustain the next 2 years, I will then probably be able to say that yes, he will be here in 10 years.
Yeah. I'm going to say yes right now, even though I would agree to wait a little longer. His career is just on such an upward just incline. Top Gun Maverick really launched him, but then Anyone But You and Twisters have been huge hits. Like, him alone made Twisters almost as big as Dune Part 2, it feels like.
Yeah.
And really, I think him and Timothée Chalamet are two of the biggest male stars that we have coming up in Hollywood right now, probably alongside Zendaya and Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah.
As 4 of just the biggest stars, period. So it's pretty neat.
It's hype.
It is hype. Any closing remarks?
Glen Powell.
Glen Powell.
I mean, you don't get better than that as a closing remark.
No, that's the perfect closing remark.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully your dad won't kill me on these takes.
I'm sure I'll find something to get mad at you for.
Yeah. You'll have to let me know.
Will do.
All right. Well, goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.